Unexpected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Have you ever wondered what it takes to turn your passion for writing into a sustainable, fulfilling career? Or what separates the dreamers from the doers in the creative world? Is it possible to juggle a day job while also achieving your artistic aspirations? These questions hover in the minds of so many creators, offering both inspiration and challenge. In the realm of writing and self-publishing, success is not just a product of creativity, but also of understanding the market, persisting through setbacks, and continuously evolving. Today, we're going to explore this side of creativity, what it means to remain true to your artistic vision while also making strategic choices that resonate with your audience. Navigating the balance between artistic integrity and market demands. It's this dance that so many find overwhelming. So how do you keep an eye on market trends without letting them dictate your creative output? Moreover, how do you maintain your momentum and motivation during these inevitable periods of time when success seems just out of reach? Let's turn the spotlight on someone who has navigated these waters with remarkable success. Auman is not only a prolific writer and author of 11 titles, but she's also a master of self-publishing, with several of her books consistently hitting bestseller lists on Amazon. Selling over 300 books a month, Catherine has found a formula that works, balancing creative satisfaction with commercial success. And today, Catherine joins us to share her insights on how to manage a day job while pursuing your artistic dreams, how to stay aligned with market needs without compromising your creative vision, and how to keep pushing forward even when the results aren't immediately visible. So buckle up as we dive into this creative journey with Catherine, learning from her experiences and finding ways to apply these lessons to our own creative endeavors. Catherine, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. It sounds like we have a lot to learn from you. So I am ready to put on my thinking cap and my listening ears. And let's start with the easy stuff first. Just tell us about yourself and what drew you to writing in the first place.
Well, when I was a little bookworm, like I'm sure a lot of your audiences was, and I used to go to the library and get, my big stack of books. This was long before the internet, and come home and read my stack of books. And I fell in love with Ray Bradbury. And I read the Martian Chronicles, and that's when I decided I want to be a writer when I grew up. But I probably forgot that. For all your midlife audience, I forgot that until I was 46. Mm-hmm. And I woke up one day and I went, how come I've been so confused? I always knew I wanted to be a writer. And I thought that being a writer meant, I'd been a literature major in school, and I thought being a writer meant writing like the great male dead authors, and I didn't write like that, so I figured I wasn't any good. And I started reading a lot of female authors, and I realized, hey, I have something to say. And I started working on a book right away there at 46. And then I took a lot of writing classes. For 10 years, I was in a writing workshop or a writing class every week, and I started learning the craft of writing. And I had wanted to write this one book, which was a fictionalized account of my living in an ashram in India for a year, a tantra ashram. So it wasn't your typical sitting and eating brown rice type of endeavor. Nothing against that, but that was not my thing. And I wrote this novel, and it took me, this is another thing for your audience, it took me 20 years to finish that book. So don't give up. Because a lot of people say, well, I have a novel sitting in my drawer. And I say, you can finish that. I did. Yes. It took me 20 years and I finished it. So that's a couple of things for people who think, oh, it's too late. It's not too late. And I wrote quite a few other books in there. So I like to share that with you as well. But those are a couple things, which is if you start late, that's fine. And if it takes you a long time, that's fine.
I love that because I'm the same way. It was, I was 37 when all of a sudden I started writing, and it was like, I've always been a writer, right? Like I always loved writing. I always thought this is a great hobby. This is something I won contests for, in school and outside of school. And it was just kind of like, oh, but in my mind, the people who became authors were the people who were already famous, like the big names. I was never going to be them. So right. How could I possibly, and what you don't see obviously is the leading up to that, the struggle buses that they're on, the rejections that they got. And so, yeah, that was always me as well. And I'm so glad that I got to the point where I could do it as more of a profession and not just a hobby, because man, to actually find your passion and live it, that's kind of fulfilling.
It's great. And you can also live it part time on the side while you're doing a day job.
Yes.
Um, I always thought real writers wrote every day. And one of my clients said to me, she had this fantasy about me that I sat down with my little tea and I lit a candle and I religiously wrote every day. I'm like, oh my God, the reality of that is really kind of a disaster compared to that.
It's only right.
But really, I wrote my, I have 11 titles. So some of them I had translated into Spanish. So I actually have written, I'm looking over there at my bookshelf, 5 or 6 books, and I've had them produced. I produced them in different versions. But I wrote all of those books. I'd also want to tell your audience that I wrote all of those books for 2-hour periods twice a week. That's it. And just that steadiness. And some of those times, so I would get together with a friend, we met through Meetup, and we would not talk. We would talk before or after, but we would just sit and write together. No critiquing. I don't even know what he was writing, really. And he really didn't know what I was writing. We would just get together in the library and write 2 hours twice a week. And if we didn't write, we still sat there and, screwed around on the computer or whatever, but we were there to write. And they got done.
Mm-hmm.
My first book got done that way. My second book got done that way. All of my books have got that done that way by 2 hours twice a week. So you probably think you don't have enough time, but you have enough time.
Oh, absolutely. And if we would just put our phones down and stop scrolling for even 25 minutes at a time, like, yeah, me too. And it's one of those things, because that gets in the way of your creativity, for one thing. Like, having those distractions, it keeps your brain from ever hitting flow state. And there's just no coming back from that a lot of times. And so, not for me anyway, because once my brain is occupied, I don't want to be creative. And so, because I find better things to do with my imagination, I guess.
Totally with you there.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've written a novel. Are all of your books nonfiction or fiction or?
My novel's my only fiction work, and it's
Okay.
really my true love. But a novel by an unknown author is not really going to sell, and I'm okay with that because I have these other books that were nonfiction. I'm a therapist; is my day job. So I started writing blog pieces to support my website, and I wrote 400 word little essays, and I crafted them like little jewels. And I had read somewhere, go ahead and do that. It increases your SEO. And then when you get 100 of them, put them together in a book. So that's what I did. That was my first book. And that sold fairly well by today's standards. The market was a little different back then. And it was selling about 10 copies a week, which is pretty good, quite good. And then I put out this book called Tantric Dating because I had been, later in life, I also went back to find my third husband, and I decided I'm going to really do it right this time. And I don't really understand how to date because I've been kind of a disaster in that area. So, not kind of, I was a dating disaster. And so I decided to put together some spiritual principles that I had learned with the dating, and I tried to date in a spiritual way. And I hope this isn't too California for your audience.
I'm open. Let's go.
And so I wanted to figure out how to do spiritual dating and learn how to become a more loving person instead of what I figured out was that the normal dating process actually teach you to be less loving.
Mm-hmm.
Because you become more and more judgmental the longer you online date. You're like, no, that's, I don't like his nose, or I don't like this or that. You just become more and more the opposite of a loving person, what I found happening to me. So I decided a way to try to figure out how to do it in a loving way and work on myself and hopefully get closer to love. And I wrote this little kind of what I figured a throwaway book. And I wasn't even going to put it out in print. I was just going to put it out as an ebook. And I put it out, and a friend of mine from Seattle wrote to me and said, "Did you know your book was named one of the top best dating books of all time?" by this book, by Book Authority. And I said, you are kidding. So I started taking it more seriously. And I put it out. By that point, I put it out in print, and then it was started selling quite well, and it was a big surprise to me. And then this was during the pandemic. I noticed we can talk about this in a little bit because I know you're interested in what I read and stuff. I was reading about the market and what's going on with books, and I started noticing on Netflix and so forth that people want to consume content in series.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know genre fiction sells in series. So, Harry Potter and this, Twilight, which, I didn't get off the couch for a month because I had to read all of Twilight all in one
Yes.
sitting. And and then we get hooked on these series on Netflix and so forth. And I thought, nobody's really done that as far as I know for self-help. I'm going to try it. So I put out 2 more little books, Tantric Dating, Mating, and Relating. And I was right. My hunch was right because they started selling each other. And when one person liked one, they would buy the other one and so forth. And they've just build on themselves. And I think this is really good advice for anybody is if you're planning to write a book, see if you can break it up into 3 small books. Because like you said, people don't want to listen to really long podcasts. Most people, not bookworms like me, still like to read long books, but most people don't. And they're going to be more likely to want to read 3 small books than 1 large book. So that has really worked for me in terms of these all building sales on each other. And I've got 3 more in the hopper to be part of that series. And I hired an artist to create covers that look like they go together, that are quite appealing. I think I just love her work. And this, that way I put out my content and I get to write it in the way I like, which is little short pieces. Mm-hmm. So I had for the novel, somehow I figured out how to make an arc and make a whole book, but I'm really much better at writing these little small pieces. And this way they kind of go together in these self-help little pieces that works for these books. And as you mentioned earlier, I'm consistently on the bestseller list for my genre, which is sacred sexuality. And I have, at any time, I have between 3 and 6 titles on that top 100 bestseller list.
Wow.
Well, this has all been a big surprise to me. But
we are here for your wisdom and for your answers. And I agree with you about the series, because that is something that when I find myself reading a fiction series, I'm invested in the characters and their stories. And then when I read the next book in that series and I get glimpses of those characters, I know they're still okay, and so like they're all tied together in some form or fashion. They're all living out their own stories, but they're all in the same world. Like, yes, I will devour a series like nobody's business.
Right.
And I never really considered the fact that a nonfiction series would be just as helpful, because if you trust a nonfiction author's words in their first book, chances are good you can take their word for whatever they're telling you in the next book and the next book. So that's genius.
Well, thank you. And I know I didn't invent this, but I kind of jumped on the bandwagon. And I think it's really important as an author to stay in touch with what's going on in the marketplace. I belong to a couple of organizations for self-published authors. One is, I always get this wrong, IBPA. I'm sorry, I always get it wrong. International Book Publishers Association, I think, and then Ally, which is one for independent authors. Mm-hmm. And I just stay, they have little free seminars on what's going on in the marketplace, what's the latest on how to sell audiobooks. I also got audiobooks made. Just a friend of mine who has a beautiful voice, I just asked her if she wanted to do audiobooks. She said yes. So, the other thing is, none of these things on their own are big sellers, but when you put the whole work together, that's what generates sales for you.
Yes, and I think that's a mindset we get into, that we want to rush to the top of things, and that we think that it should automatically hit the top of that list, but you're not seeing the grunt work that goes into it behind the scenes to get it there. Exactly.
And they say what's the best thing you can do to sell your book is write your next book, publish your next book. And I have really found that to be true, because you can't really, it's going to be really hard to sell one book.
Mhm.
Even your friends don't want to buy your book because there's so much content now, and they
Yes.
will to be nice to you, but they don't really want to. And there's just too much content. And
Yeah.
so the best thing you can do is build yourself a body of work in any field as a creator, and then people start becoming interested. And as you said, it's what's all underneath the iceberg that people don't say. Think, oh, you're an instant success. Well, that I guess in Japan there's a saying that instant success takes 15 years to build.
How
And
true is that?
yeah,
Oh yeah, and we have this the mindset, I guess. We see other people get there faster than we are getting there. But geez Louise, you're not looking at all the extra work and the hours and the grind and just, and the resources that they're putting into their work. I co-host another podcast with two other authors, and we talk about this regularly. I'm the only one in the group that writes in a series form, and I've told them, I'm like, you never know where one book of your series is going to land on somebody's radar that sends them back to the first book or the
right.
fourth book. Like, you have to be there, and because yeah, what if this trope is for this person but this trope is not for that person, but they're like, oh, I liked the story, I'll go back. So you I think series is the place to go, but yes, it does take effort and hard work to get there.
Yes, it does. And it takes, I think, long view of your career helps,
Yes.
and no matter which creative field you're in. Um, because if you're just expecting to, I had a friend who was a visual artist, and he had sent something into, I don't know, one of the big museums like the Met in New York or something. And instead of turning him down, they said to him, please keep us apprised of your career as it grows. I thought, wow, that is so helpful that you
Yeah.
don't expect your initial work to hit anybody over the head, which we're taught today, that you should come out, write a best selling book. This really doesn't happen hardly ever. When it does, but those people knew somebody, or they went to the right schools, or they're just not like an ordinary person like I am. You have to really work at it. And I'm surprised now. I work a thing called Pubby, which some of your writers might want to know about. Are you on that, Jen?
I'm not. What is that?
Pubby is a website where writers exchange Amazon reviews. So
Oh.
you actually review each other's books, and you either share them for free or 99 cents. And then they're actually legitimate reviews because you've bought the book, and then you write it, post it. And I know a lot of people today with self-publishing are writing books and they can't really write,
Mm-hmm.
or they're using AI, and it shows up right away. It shows up right away. So I review books for them every single day, sometimes two. And I just want to say that taking the time to learn your craft is very important.
Yes.
It's very important, and it's worth it. It's like we shouldn't, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound like a nag here, but we should know grammar. You know,
Yes.
I sit down and I study grammar, and I study words and how they go together, and studying other people's writing and stuff. So I just want to say that that extra effort of learning our craft shows up because people, I think this is going to sound very California-ish, but I think people can pick up the energy of how much you have put into it and how serious you are about your craft,
Mm-hmm.
what's your intention behind it. Another thing I do is all of my work's available for free.
Oh yeah.
So I give it out for free, and on my blog. So anyone who's listening can go to my blog, go back to the old blog, from a few years back, and you can get each little piece from each little book is on there. And that to me is kind of a metaphysical way of saying, I'm here to give.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here just trying to make a bunch of money, because you're not going to make a bunch of money as a writer. I'm here to give, and if you like it, that's great. If you don't, you can move along. It's not for everybody, but here, have it for free. And I think that sets up an energy that is attractive to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that the universe gives back in a certain way if you are willing to give. I sell my books for cheaper than other people do because I'm an fairly unknown author, and I want people to discover my work because I still even though I'm on these bestseller lists, these small bestseller lists, I still feel that my career is still at the stage of building my audience for the future. I still see it as building my audience for the future. I'm still trying to build people who like my work and are interested in what's coming out next. And I think rather than saying I'm out for a killing on this book, you just keep saying I'm just keep trying to find my audience, the people who like my work. That's not everybody. In fact, it's not most people. My category is very small, but I have some loyal readers, and I'm going for those people so that my next book maybe will go a little bit more and a little bit more. Maybe someday I'll interest one of the top 5 publishers, but if I don't, I'm still building my audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and so I'm going to go back to one thing you said, and then I'm going to come back to the audience thing. So even if you aren't the best grammar, if you have a story to tell and you're not great with grammar, you're not great with words, hire an editor. That's what they're
Yes.
for. You know, like that is one of those things that I will never get tired of preaching is that even if you are not the best writer, if you have a story to tell, an editor can take your work from level 1 to level 10, you know, like that's what they are for. So by all
Yeah.
means, don't be afraid to tell your story, just don't be afraid to get help with it either.
Yeah. I hire an editor off of
Mm-hmm.
Fiverr
Mm-hmm.
for every, after every book is finished, I send it to an editor, and I've like done
Yep.
my best, and they still come up with like 350 things that you didn't catch.
Yes, and you'll publish it and still find a typo, you know, it's like
Exactly. It's so weird.
that is so how it goes. And then fast forward back to the audience part. How do you find that target audience that you're looking for? I mean, you are kind of in a little niche area with your writing and your topic, but even still, you have to find the target market for your book. So how do you go about finding that?
Well, I think one thing you want to do is go on Amazon. I think 70% of all books are sold on Amazon now, or it might even be higher than that. You want to go on Amazon and choose a category that you're going to be in, because that's how Amazon's going to market your book. And whether we like it or not, Amazon is really our boss.
Yep.
So you want to find what's going to help it sell on Amazon, because I tried marketing on social media, and it's not really book buyers, but when someone goes to Amazon to the book section, they're looking to buy. So that's where I want people to see my book. I want to be in the categories that Amazon markets books under. They will narrow it way down for you, and you want to get keywords that they're searching for, and you just use some tools to help you be successful with Amazon. I sell my books in other places, but since that's the majority, that's where I want to win by their rules.
Yeah, unfortunately, Amazon is kind of, you know, I don't want to say they have a monopoly on books, but they really do. I mean, technically, that's what Amazon started as was books. Like it was not this worldwide marketplace like it is now. It was for books, and a lot of people don't remember that probably because they're too young or whatever. The Amazon generation is too young, but so they know what they're doing when it comes to selling books. And
Yeah.
yes, you do have to follow their rules. You have to find their algorithm. I still haven't mastered the Amazon ads. I haven't. But I do know that having my books available on Kindle Unlimited, which is controversial for some self-published authors, they don't love it. But that's my biggest moneymaker is Kindle Unlimited, especially with my series, because when people start, the next thing you know, they're swiping to the next book to immediately start reading. So
Perfect.
you do have to get in there on the Amazon, the keywords and your categories. Yes, those are the main things on Amazon. I agree.
I do Amazon ads, and that's why I have the book sales I have. Frankly, I took a class on it, and I realized this is not really my strength, but I want to understand it. So I hire someone again on Fiverr, and he's from India, and he is a master at Amazon ads, and he runs my ads for me every month, and you could tell him how much you want to spend, and that puts your books, the thing where it says, if you like this book, you'll like this
Mm-hmm.
book. That's where your book will show up. So when you ask me, how do you find readers? Amazon ads does that for you. It's like people who like your kind of book are going to like this kind of book. And we're going to, if you give us 12 cents or whatever, we're going to show this to them because they're the kind of people who like this book. So their AI will figure it out for you. And that is when my book sales started really, you can see the line graph uh, of my book sales on Amazon. And this is when I started
Yes.
doing Amazon ads. So it just, it's, you spend as much as you want and it will sell books for you to the type of people who are looking for your book.
And I think that's so important because you said earlier, like not every reader is meant to have your book in their hands. Like not every reader is going to appreciate your work. And so you do want to make sure that your books are going to people who will appreciate them. Because if they don't appreciate them and they get stuck reading it and they're like, guess what? That review is going to not be as positive as it probably needs to
Exactly.
be. Yeah. So
And
your
you're
book is
going to get
not
some,
for
yeah,
everyone.
and you're going to get some bad reviews. Some people just, that's their joy in life is to put down other
Yes.
people's creative effort. I don't get it, but I've had really mean reviews and you just try to bury them. Some guy was asking me, what do I do about these bad reviews? I said, you just try to bury them under a lot of positive reviews. So
Mm-hmm.
I do this thing, Pubby, that I mentioned earlier, where you get reviews from other authors. I've had mean reviews from other authors, so I don't know, rarely, however. And you just have to have the long-term view that I'm building this career. A couple bad reviews are inevitable. There's people who don't like the Dalai Lama or the Pope. I mean, what are you going to do? It's like nobody likes everybody. So um,
Yes.
even these people are out trying to do good things. So you just take a long-term view that I'm going to build keep. Another thing you can do with your books is keep getting new, fresh reviews because
Mm-hmm.
some people have reviews that are a couple years old, and that's good. It's better than nothing. But I try to get new reviews quarterly, keep it updated and fresh, that people are still interested in my books.
Yes, and every now and then you can offer, Facebook groups all the time. There are people constantly looking for, they call them ARC reads, but after your book's been out, it's no longer an advanced reading copy, but they will gladly take your book if you will hand it over to them for free and they will give you a review. And it's usually an honest review. So if you're open to honest reviews of your work. But yeah, there are people who love to read to the point where they're like, send me your books, I want to review them, and I'm like, more power to you. So
That's
yeah, take
great.
advantage. Yeah, take advantage of those kinds of things. I am not that person. I don't love giving book reviews. I'm always scared, like, well, if I don't like it, and then so I never sign up to give book reviews. Like I'm terrified of doing that because I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah, I think most people who say they're going to give you an honest review are actually kindly souls. In my
Mm-hmm.
experience, it's just these people who want to be cruel to for whatever
Yeah.
reason. So
Yes.
I'm not afraid of an honest review. Just scary with these people. Never mind. It doesn't happen very often, but it kind of sticks with you.
It does. It really does. So let's talk real quick about how you're a therapist and you write books. How do you juggle? Because sometimes I can get consumed by my art and forget the rest of the world exists, and then sometimes the rest of the world kind of takes over and pushes out my art. So where's that balance?
I think because I always had writing on the side, I don't think I've had to ever. It's never been a full time thing for me. And for many years, I was frustrated creative because I hadn't remembered that I wanted to write. So I would have all these friends who were very creative, and I'm like, or I would have boyfriends that were creative, and it's like I hadn't owned my own creativity. I was always having friends who were creative, and then I'm like, oh, they're so cool. And then I had to stop and think, why do I surround myself, and why am I in love with these guys who are artists? It's like I should be doing that. So I think when I finally got back in touch with my creativity, it was always something I did on the side. So I didn't really have that same struggle that you've had. It's like 2 hours twice a week. That works. I'm trying to do a little bit more than that now, and it's frustrating because I set that kind of time frame up for myself, and I could do more, but I'm kind of locked in that. So
Yeah.
it's been a little different for me.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's very doable to have your day job and then produce wonderful work on the side.
And speaking of, do you have any ideas in mind? You said you've got some books in the hopper. What's your next project that you want to share with us?
Well, I'm doing three more books in my series. I have tantric dating, mating, and relating, and I'm with the same topics. I'm having tantric loving, tantric pro aging, and tantric healing. So those are all
Nice.
the gerunds there. And I've just got the wonderful the artist just made the wonderful covers, and now I just have to write the books.
That's always so hard because it's like, oh, it's so pretty. Let's do all the creative, pretty stuff. Like my
Yes,
bookmarks and my stickers, and I'm like, now I need a book to go with
I
that.
gotta sit down and write. Oh yeah.
Thinking about your work and your job, as I was a marriage and family counselor for a
Oh,
long time,
okay.
and I that kind of the whole virtual counseling was not for me, and that's kind of where we ended. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. There's
Hmm.
something about that personal connection that I wasn't getting, and I just didn't feel like I was doing my best at it. And so I saw my last client, I guess about 2 years ago, and I was like, and we're good. And I'm not sad that that happened, but I could also imagine that my work would spill over into my writing. And I guess because you kind of write on the subjects that you counsel on, do you ever have a conflict there in your mind where you're like, I need to write about this, but I can't write about this? Like,
I
you ever
think
have
I've
a,
had that more about my family,
mm,
that I don't want my family to know what I'm writing about. Um, but with clients, I just think I have really good boundaries. And I think that sometimes I will take teaching stories, something that I've shared with a client, and turn that into a little
mm,
article. Or I'll notice that clients are talking about a certain thing, and then I will respond in a written piece. They'll never know I did it, or if they did, I don't know because it's not for them particularly. But I think in terms of writing self help, I think it's actually helped my career and been a benefit. I can try out ideas with clients. You know, do you think this would be helpful or whatever? And they'll go, no. And I'll go, well, maybe I need to revise that thinking or whatever. There isn't really a lot of overlap. I'm surprised. I thought clients would come to me because of my books, but it doesn't really ever come as a reason why people work with me. I thought that my clients would read my books. They're as full of content as everyone else. They're like, I just really don't want to read your books. I do send out I send out my stuff free in newsletters. I have a newsletter twice a month. I send out my little articles from my books. That promotes my books also. So that probably adds to book sales that I don't know about. Um, so I think actually being a therapist and writing self-help, to me, it's been nothing but good.
That's awesome. I love that. I love when they can overlap like that because there's no end to the wealth of information that you have to draw from. And so I think that's pretty fantastic. Whereas sometimes my fictional characters just shut up and they stop talking to me and I'm like, I really need you to talk to me today. And they're like, we're good, thanks. So,
Yeah,
I envy you in a lot
yeah.
of ways.
I think
Okay.
also, I just wanted to say this
Yeah.
also. I think it really helps with the language because therapists can talk, jargon and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think when you really are an effective therapist, you start speaking English with your clients instead of a bunch of psychological jargon. And I
Yes.
think that ability to turn language, psychological concepts into the way people actually talk has really benefited my books. And I think I learned
Yes.
that in the trenches of like, this is how you talk about these, you can talk about attachment disorders, whatever this kind of lingo, or you can just say, the way people might feel too close to each other or have trouble letting go. And I think that second way of speaking is much better, not only for therapy, but also for writing for the public. Now, if you're going to
I
write
agree.
scholarly work, that's a whole nother genre that I haven't written much in. But when you're writing for the public, you want to write in a conversational tone. And I feel like that's been helpful.
I agree. And you can tell when somebody has tried really way too hard to sound more intelligent than maybe they are, or like you said earlier, there's a vibe. You can feel when somebody
Yeah.
is saying what they're saying because they want to help you and when they want to sell you something. There's a big difference. And that's true in
Yes.
fiction too. Yeah, I know.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So I think
For
a lot
sure.
of first books that I see, like on Pubby, people are coming out with their first book. A lot have been generated by AI. And I think their first book is there's a barrier you break between a person who's written a book and a person who hasn't written a book. And I think it's great to get above that line. I'm a person who's written a book that establishes credibility in your field. But then when you're going to go on from there, you want to start speaking from your own voice so we know who you are. And that's
Yes.
what you were saying, Jen. That's the authenticity. We trust you. We like what you have to say. We like your particular take on it. You might be wrong, you might be right, but we like the way you see things. And I think you build that through not just repackaging someone else's material, but by really coming through your own school of hard knocks. It's like we like people who had to learn things the hard way. We like that. We
Absolutely.
like to read fiction about it. We like to read self help about people who've been there. So, whatever words you have in your creative endeavors, that's what we're interested in. We're not interested in you uh, just shining it over with this finished project. I think it makes me much more uh, credible as a person who writes about dating that I was so bad at it. And then I got my perfect love through learning how to do it differently. So I think that anybody who's out there struggling with your creative process, just keep trying to tell us the truth.
Yes.
We
No, I
want your
love
truth.
that.
We want what makes you different than anyone else. We want your particular take on it. Might not be my cup of tea, but that's how you're going to find your audience is or Jen's cup of tea, but you will find your audience who are like, wow, this person speaks the truth, and that's the truth that is helping me right now in my life.
It's kind of like
And fiction,
soulmates, right? Like you're going to communicate with their soul through your work, and they're like it's a connection. There's definitely a connection
yeah,
there.
I think it happens on some kind of level that we're not really aware of, in
Mhm.
addition to just being good writing or, knowing how to package a book.
I agree. All right, Catherine, I know our time is kind of coming to a close here, but I've got two more questions for you. The first one is, how can listeners connect with you and your work?
Well, it's kind of hard to miss me. I'm kind of everywhere. I'm on all social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And I have a full YouTube channel with like over 300 videos. So you're welcome to look there for little tidbits. You don't have to make any big commitments. And my books are small. My books are on Amazon. They're on Audible. Um, they're on Draft to Digital and so on. Uh, Ingram, so all the usual places. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you can do that on my website. I should have mentioned my website. So all of these things have my name on them, which is Catherine with a C, Auman. So if you into any of these places, if you just put my name in, my stuff will come up. And I love to connect with you. Just say hi.
Yeah, no, I love that. And we'll put it in the show notes so that all they have to do is go click some links and they can find you wherever. And you're right. You Google Catherine Auman and you are everywhere. Like she's not exaggerating. Like she is everywhere. And I was like, oh, good. I can get to know anybody just to click on the link here. So no, that was fantastic. I always want to make sure that I'm talking to who I'm talking to in the sense that are there two of you? Are there just one of you? There's just one of you, or at least you have a monopoly on the internet.
Yeah. So again, you look at this in long term. So you're building your platform, you're building your
Mm-hmm.
presence. You just want yourself to be on as many things as possible. I mean, we don't have time to do all the social media like they say we should do, but we can make an effort and so forth, and just again take the long term view.
Absolutely. All right. And then my last question, it's the big question. It's going to be the game changer for somebody out there listening. What is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
Wow. There's so many I would like to give. I think that really work on your craft
Mm,
and don't expect that you're supposed to sound like someone else or be like someone else. That doesn't mean you don't have to be good at what you do because you have to build your craft, I believe. This whole thing about sort of native talent that doesn't need to develop itself like Mozart comes along once every, 1,000 years or something. The rest of us have to puddle away and get better.
yes.
And so I think that your unique thing is what we want to hear from you. That's what I would want to leave because I read all these AI books and they're like, this is just kind of adding to a big mess out there of kind of, I'm glad you wrote a book so you can get over that barrier, but we would really rather hear your take on this,
Yes.
your particular take, even if it's not right. I would like to hear what you have to say, what your lessons from life are, whether it's through your fiction. My fiction book is all about the mistakes I made and learning experiences and so on. That's what I like to read. And so I would say keep at your craft and take the long view because we have an ageist society that thinks it's all over by the time you're pick a number. And I'm collecting articles on people like because I need them for inspiration on people who are most successful in their 80s and 90s. You know, like I just found out that Frank Lloyd Wright did 1/3, that great architect, he did 1/3 of those famous buildings between the age of 80 and 95, 93. So it's like, take a long-term view of your career. If you're not successful yet, that doesn't mean you won't be later. So you just keep building and just keep putting out work and just keep marketing it and advertising it. And none of us are going to be J.K. Rowling, but we can have our own little success with our own people whose lives we're enriching and helping, and we're passing along what we learned to someone else. And that is a life well lived. You shared yourself, you shared your work, and my husband used to say to me, so I used to give these talks on my tantric dating, and at the beginning we would have not that many people show up, or like, for example, when I would do book events for my first book, and like 3 people would show up, and I'd be like really disappointed. And my husband was great. He'd say, look, if you helped one person, it was worth it.
Yes.
So I really keep that in my mind. It's like going to get a little down about something about my creativity. It's like, if one person liked it, you did a good job. If you enrich someone's life in some way, that was worth doing. That was worth doing. That's when you can go to bed at night and go, wow, my life's worthwhile. And it can really help you in those, because the numbers will be small at the beginning. And, big time authors are going to laugh at my 300 a month, but I think that's really good for an unknown person. And, they're selling thousands a day or whatever. And it's like, so I got my little numbers here. And it's like, if I can, if 300 people, I'm not going to say they all like my book. If even a couple of those people got something from that book, that was worth spending the time doing it. So I think that's a good attitude to have towards your work. It's like, it's not really about how many you sell. It's nice, but it's really about, have you touched anybody? Were you able to communicate something of what life's about to you, to someone else, and give them hope?
Yes, you were given a story, and you are meant to share your story because it is meant for somebody, right? Like, you have a story that is going to connect with somebody, and if you feel the need to share it, maybe you don't feel that desire. But some of us have stories inside of us that we're like, I need to share it, but you're not sharing it, then you're going to do somebody a disservice, because clearly there's somebody out there in the world that needs to hear it. And so, yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic mentality to have. And all of the big name authors, they have people pushing their work. They pay people to push their work. You are doing all of the work for your work. And so you should feel doubly proud of 2 sales a month if that's all you get, because you've done that work. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much content now. You may not even get 2 sales a month until you've built a body of work. That's going to be really disappointing. But that doesn't mean that you're not a success later. So you just keep building on it, because people are more impressed when you have 11 titles than when you have 2.
Yes.
And people are more going to take you seriously as you grow, and as you're showing up in more places, people are going to take you more seriously. You just keep building it.
Yes.
Giving. You focus on the giving, then I believe you'll be given too.
I agree. Catherine, thank you so much for hanging out and having this conversation. I think it was very uplifting and very positive, even though it could get really heavy if we're not careful, because it can be discouraging when your books don't just take off. But if you know that the long run is what you're aiming for, look at the end goal and keep working to get there. I think somebody's going to leave very inspired today. I know I am. So thank you for sitting down with me and hanging out.
You are fun to hang out with. We'll have to do it again.
Yes, please. That sounds great.